Let me encourage you. Yes. Perfect. All right, we are reconvening our regular council meeting of December 11th. We left off at 15.2 landfill and recycle center hours of operation.
Good afternoon, Council. Administration is requesting approval on changes to the hours of operation for the recycle center and landfill just for the 2023 holiday season. As per our waste management bylaw 1980-20, the landfill will be closed on December 25th, 26th, and January 1st. And my apologies, there's a typo, that should say 2024. Administration is recommending that the landfill close at 1 p.m. on Friday, December 23rd and December 30th to align with the rest of city operations and to avoid some overtime costs. At the recycling center, since switching to operating without personnel, we've had to have someone usually come in on Sundays to clean up after the weekend. Christmas Day this year falls on a Monday, and so there will be no one available to do that. Administration's recommendation is to close the gates of the recycle center for December 24, 25, and 26, with personnel being on site on the 27th to allow people to bring in their holiday recycling and available to clean up the site. And then a similar situation will happen over the New Year statutory holiday, and we're requesting to have the gates closed on December 31st and January 1st. Communications will be provided to provide notice to citizens, and signage will be added to the recycling center and landfill if approved. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I move that City Council approves the change of operating hours for the recycling center to be closed on December 24th, 25th, and 26th, and the 31st of 2023 and January 1st, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't agree with this. A number of years ago, we closed the library. I'm like Councillor Aberley. We closed the landfill on Boxing Day, and people drove to the recycle center, tossed things over the fence, and we had to send a number of different people out there, not just one, to pick up all the waste. People didn't even care. They just threw stuff over and let the wind take it or whatever. My suggestion is that we open on Boxing Day, and whomever is working on that day gets the 27th off, and then we don't have to worry about even paying overtime. So, or I guess it's a stat, so you might have to pay a little bit, but you could alternate working hours so that it's open. But I really would like council to consider this, because it's something people don't, maybe people are going to work on the 27th and things, they want to get their house clean, but I just have a real problem with it being closed on Boxing Day. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to administration, what did we do last year for Boxing Day?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, this is exactly what we had proposed last year.
And obviously Councillor Elliott had some concerns. Did we see those concerns last year?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, every evening when people aren't there, there's a mess made or whatever, or on the weekends. So this would just limit the amount of mess to clean up if it was open while the personnel weren't there.
Go ahead.
So I would move to amend that the recycling center be open on the 26th. Thank you.
Okay, to the amendment. Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to council, I am in agreement with Councillor Elliott. The 26th, and I'm kind of joking, but the 26th is called Boxing Day, and it is a day that many use for being able to clean up after the holidays, being able to do things out, the ability for people to have a full that week off does not occur very much, and I would also like to give our community the opportunity to recycle their goods on Boxing Day. Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, the chair. How many staff do we have working on Boxing Day? Do we have the transportation department working, maintenance, or anybody? Because I imagine there's going to be arenas or stuff like that, facilities that are open because the public wants to use it.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco. So I don't have the recreation facilities schedule in front of me, but with respect to the remaining Public Works Department, there is nobody working on Boxing Day.
Nobody working on Boxing Day.
For Public Works, there's nobody working on Boxing Day. They are on call for emergencies, but nobody's actually coming to work on Boxing Day from Public Works.
Is our swimming pool facility open on Boxing Day?
Through the mayor to Councillor Branco, I'm just trying to pull up the holiday hours for the Manlock, but I do believe, if you give me a second, I should be able to pull that up.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification through to Kathy. Kathy, there is somebody who goes around and checks all the buildings each day, correct? Regardless of whether it's a holiday or not? Do we not have somebody that checks like City Hall to make sure everything's safe and secure?
The chair to council, we have facility staff on call over the holidays in case there's any issue with any of the facilities or buildings.
Oh, but they don't check each building individually each day?
No, they're just
On call.
here on call for emergencies.
Okay, thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Branco, apologies for the delay. Last year, our team was closed at the Manlock Center for between the Christmas Eve and Boxing Day, so the 24th, 25th, 26th, as well as New Year's Day, we were closed. The Civic Center, Twin Arenas, the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 31st, 1st, and 2nd, we were also closed. I have asked the staff for an update for this year to determine the exact days, but we would be following a schedule similar to what we would have done last year.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to administration, on Boxing Day is not a provincial statutory holiday. So is it considered a stat holiday by the city, and would people working it be paid time and a half?
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley, the city follows both provincial and federal, and so Boxing Day is a stat holiday.
For government
Correct.
workers?
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair, when this proposal was brought to us, was consideration given to staffing abilities for that day? Was that part of the consideration of being closed, or what was the rationale of being closed for that day?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley. So the days that we're requesting to have the recycle center closed, those are the city employee statutory holidays. So we don't have anyone scheduled to work those days already. So it would be bringing someone in on overtime to work on the 26th, because that is a stat holiday for city employees.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Just a general comment, I guess, is we're in the people service business, and I, like Councillor Elliott, believe we have a large percentage of our population want to access a service on a given day for all the right reasons, and I think we should provide that service. So I'll support the motion for the amendment.
Did the city receive any complaints last year about not being open on Boxing Day?
To the chair, we did not receive any complaints last year.
Councilor Bronco.
The chair, so would this mean if it was, this motion was defeated, it'd be a total rewrite of everybody's schedule like we do, everything's scheduled? Or is this for, how would you say it, enough lean time to get people to work on Boxing Day?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, I believe with our human resources directives, we need to give, I think, 48 hours for a shift change, but our preference is to give 2 weeks notice so that they can move around their own personal schedules.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, I don't know if we'd have to pay a full day's overtime. Maybe somebody could just go in for 4 hours in the afternoon. I don't know. Maybe you'd have to be a full day, but I still think one day of overtime, or as I said, you give them the next day off in lieu of and still pay them time and a half for that day. You're not paying double time and a half. So thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Chair. To my colleague, how about meeting 50-50, start at noon, close at 5, because it's Christmas Day the day before, and we had a few little parties, and to get up early in the morning. I don't think anybody's going to go at 10 o'clock to go to deposit garbage at a landfill. Yeah, you guys take 2 hours to get out of bed.
Anything further? To the amendment of including the 26th as a workday. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to the original motion, taking the 26th out of it. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried.
I move that City Council approves the change of operating hours for the landfill to be closed at 1 p.m. on December 23rd and 30th.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess to Kathy, if we were to shut the landfill at 1 p.m. on the 23rd, does that have any kind of impact on contractors that even we employ to do garbage dumps or whatever?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, majority of our contractors, including our own, are Monday to Friday only.
So there would be no impact.
Very likely limited, if any contractors came in.
Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Item 15.3, 2022 audited financial statements update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I wanted to present this ahead of the budget discussion, just to give Council an update. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. In 2020, administration had commissioned a department review for finance, given the challenges that Council had identified with respect to how the department was functioning. The report was presented to Council and the plan to help address the shortcomings of the department began. There were 16 recommendations, and while work still continues, there have been many improvements. I won't go through the whole table, but I did put updates into where everything is. So the majority of them have either been completed, are planned for 2024, or items that are going to be ongoing. So training, et cetera, will be happening ongoing. So implementing these recommendations has been a focus of the city to ensure that the city can meet its legal obligations, specifically with timely reporting of year-end audited financials. There have been several challenges since this report was approved, including COVID, staff attraction, and introduction of the new audit firm, which was one of the recommendations of the report. The new auditor has done a very comprehensive review of the city's financial system and has found several areas that required deeper investigation to ascertain a certainty of compliance. This was challenging in many areas because staff were unable to find supporting documentation, sometimes going back many years. The auditor will obviously explain this in January when they do come in to present the audited financials to council. This has led the city to a point where we realize that continuing to dig for information that we may not be able to find is futile. In conjunction with the auditor, it was agreed that administration should stop searching and develop a plan to ensure it's available for the 2023 year-end audit. What this means is that the auditor cannot provide certainty of our 2022 starting point amongst a few other items and therefore cannot provide a clean audit. Administration is working with the auditor to develop a plan to get the required information in the early stages of 2023 so that this does not continue to happen, and we'll be approaching council with the plan and requesting any additional funds that might be required. It should be noted that the city will be in a surplus position for 2022 and that the missing information is related to things like our tangible capital assets, which cannot be validated at this time. So we know that it's going to take about 4 to 5 months of a dedicated staff member to actually go back and validate that information that, from what we can tell, never was validated since TCA was introduced. The auditor also, there's a few things that would be, a couple of things that are holding it up. So the Peace Hills Utilities audit needs to be completed, and that auditor is telling us that they should have that ready by the end of this year. And then they can provide it to the city's auditor, who can then remove the adverse opinion and make it a qualified opinion. So really it has nothing to do with the financial position in the ending of 2022, because we know that we're going to have a surplus, and it has everything to do with things that get reported to the province, like our assets and how we validate those. I would also like to remind council that these issues are historical, and staff are confident that with the team that we have in finance currently and the continued support of council to fund required changes, that the city is on track to correct the past concerns and be able to have a clean audit moving forward. Like I said earlier, Metrics Group will be in January to give the audited financial update to council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. I move that City Council accepts the 2022 audited financial statements update as information.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some questions that I did send ahead of time. Is there going to be a cost for computer training for our staff if we go to the Diamond or the Questica?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, there is always budgeted money for finance and other staff that use the software to be trained in the software, yes.
So are these brand new programs? We've had Questica for a while, but is the Diamond accounting software new? The
Questica is fairly new, and staff have just in the last couple of years taken training on it. The Diamond, Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the base, like the foundation of the software. It's kind of like the foundation of the software, and then Great Plains is the software that we use for our financial system. Great Plains no longer has support. Is that?
Sorry, I just want to, actually it's the complete. Yeah. So Microsoft Dynamics is our enterprise resource planning. So that's our entire financial system. Everything's built off on top of that. Diamond is our tax and utility module, and also business licensing and enforcement, and specific to municipalities module built on top of that. And there is training budget for finance staff, but because of like the high turnover, a lot of our people are new.
And what about Questica?
Questica is our budgeting software. I know there's been training on it. It's a very, very actually cool and very complex software. I've had some free training with the Questica people. There's a lot of things we could do, but a lot of our staff isn't quite there yet. And I want to make sure that I'm personally there to support them before we can go further.
Okay, just that when we purchased programs in the past, training was included with the contract when we signed on to those programs. That's what I was asking the question for.
The training is included when you purchase a program. Any training after that, you would need to pay for, but it is worked into the staff budgets.
Okay, and then why can't we have everything on one program? Why do we have Diamond and Questica? The reason yes, I'm old. Yes, I've been here for a long time, but we have had a number of different programs in finance, and every time we've got one, Dale Lundland will back me up. We get one, and it's going to be the best in the whole world. And then 3 or 4 years later, whoops, this one didn't work. We have to buy another one. And so this is why I'm asking, and I'm asking why we have 2 programs. If one is for budget and one is for the ongoing stuff, why can't they be amalgamated?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, we cannot speak for the decisions of the past, nor.
No, I know you can't. I'm just sharing with you.
I have no idea why we have so many pieces, and so moving forward, we do know that GP is not being supported anymore, and so we are putting together a plan for council to consider a different software system, and I am sure a system that gets presented will hopefully do all of the required things that the municipality needs, so that we're not going off of several different platforms.
Thank you. With regard to us having a delay on the audit, what does this do to FCSS and library grant funding?
Through the mayor to Councillor Elliott, in regards with FCSS, administration did meet with the executive director for Wetaskiwin FCSS and the province. My understanding is there will be no impact to the city's FCSS funding because of these delays. We have not had the same discussions with the library, and I know that our finance department is currently working with the Wetaskiwin Library Board to get those statements filed.
Okay, thank you. And just as an aside, Christine Hutchinson has been hired as the new library manager, which the library board is very happy about that. And the other question that I did ask Sue was about cross-training. Are all the people in finance going to eventually be cross-trained so that everybody's able to do some of the other person's jobs?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, not everyone will be trained for every position. That's not feasible, but there will be people that are cross-trained for every position.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tyler. Sue, so you're saying in 5-6 months, so by May, we will have all the audits all set up, done?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, no, I said we would need 4 to 6 months to clean up the TCA and validate it. The auditor, that we've created a schedule, he did indicate that we didn't have enough runway to get it through for the April 1st, but that they did believe that late June, early July was feasible.
Through the chair to Sue, and it's a follow-up to Councillor Bronco's comments. The 4 to 5 months to get the TCAs all sorted out, the capital assets. Typically, when do we start working on an annual audit?
So typically, annual audit starts sometime in December. This is when we do the prep work, and then we don't actually start working out the numbers until halfway through January, just so that the departments can get all their invoices in. And usually audits are, like, from our side, the trial balance provided to the auditors by March, early March-ish, and then they will be able to finish their work sometime in June. So that's like the plan for most municipalities that I've worked with. The thing with the TCA right now is it's it's a balance sheet asset that holds a lot of history. So if from the very beginning it wasn't treated correctly, then there's going to be a lot of issues built into there, and that's why it takes so long to clean up.
I guess what I'm leading up to, and it sort of diverts from the question at hand, but it ties together, is that are we already then anticipating asking for extensions on the 2023 audit then?
No, as of right now, I am optimistic that we will be able to meet it with the caveat that there will be qualification on TCA for sure, because we would not be able to have that particular part of the audit completed on time. But we will, so when it comes to audit opinions, it goes clean audit opinion, qualified, which is saying that it's mostly clean except for certain parts that need to be worked on, and an adverse. So as of right now, I'm very fairly confident that we'll for sure get unqualified on everything else except for the two parts except for the TCA that's already been identified. There's just no way we can finish that before June 2023 or 24.
And then if we're talking about the TCAs and the difficulty getting them completed, and there was talk about being 4 to 5 months of staff time, there was a point where we in councils basically gave administration a blank check and said, deal with finance. And so what would be the difficulty or the barriers to cashing that check and getting staff in here whose only job is to get us to the point where TCAs are up to date and part of the 2023 audit? So we're not even dealing with a qualified audit, we're dealing with a certified audit.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, that is part of our plan that we've mapped out with finance and in discussion with the audit team. And so the monies of the past to get the report done and bring in staff to clean up other areas has already been spent. So we would be coming back to council in January when Toulouse is back and looking at more support for a term person. We don't believe that we need anybody, another staff member in finance. We believe we just need some term help for 4 or 5 months.
And so you're saying you will be coming back to the council?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. 15-4, 2024 operating and capital budget approval.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council. Administration informed Council at the regular Council meeting on September 25th, 2023, that the 2024 base budget required a budget increase of $664,790, which is equivalent to 3.6617% to maintain current service level. Since then, Council deliberated on the 2024 operating capital budget on October 16 to 18, and again on November 27th. At the end of the deliberation, the 2024 operating budget, including operating business cases, totaled $44,102,090, and the 2024 capital budget equal to $6,091,230. The 2024 operating budget projected an increase in the tax requirement of $1,004,523, which include the base budget and other approved operating business cases. So this is estimated to be an increase in tax rate of 5.5330% for the municipal portion of taxes. So the school board and senior lodge authority requisition isn't factored in there. The 2024 capital budget had no impact and will be fully funded through a combination of reserve and grants. So for the average Wetaskiwin home with an assessment value of $228,839 in 2023, the annual bill is expected to increase by $133 per year, or $11 to 12 cents a month. Again, this does not account for school board and senior lodge requisitions. Administration received the assessment value from the city assessors in February, and council may have an opportunity to reduce the tax impact if assessment comes in higher than expected before the tax rate is set and notices are sent out. So in the attachments, I included all the changes that were made to the base budget through those budget deliberations, as well as the 5-year capital plan. Welcome any question.
Councilor Bronco.
Do I have to say I move or? But I have some questions.
We need a motion on the floor to ask questions.
Okay. I move that City Council approve the 2024 budget in the amount of $44,102,090. Includes funds required for the 2024 operating business case.
Moved by Councilor Bronco. Go ahead.
Question. I'm looking at here at your sidewalk program, and then I got this little letter here. Does that include the Hope Mission sidewalk in that capital project or case?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, the Hope Mission is responsible for everything to get to that site and all the connections. We could include it in the program if council wanted to, and then endeavor to recover after, or we can just leave it with the permit requirements.
So it's not part of the budget?
No.
And when we do development, isn't it up to the contractor to pay 100% for everything and not have the city paid and getting reimbursed?
Sorry, can you speak into the mic? I didn't hear.
Sorry, Sue, I got to change this mic. Isn't it part of our plan when a subdivision or development goes ahead that the developer pays for 100% everything?
Yes.
Not the city to
That's
pay
correct.
for percentages? So it kind of struck me, that's what popped up, that the city, that Hope Mission would pay back that city portion. I don't.
No, they're 100% responsible.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to administration. Regarding the home pickup of compost, do we have a tentative date to start? My understanding it's the spring of 2024, but
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, the organics program, curbside organics program is scheduled to start at the beginning of May 2024.
okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess, as a comment, I'm still toying whether or not to vote in favor of this. And more so, I'm a little curious, and maybe this will be a question to administration. What are our risks by not having met with the auditor on working on the 2022's financial statement by approving this? We've yet to meet with Matrix. What risks do we as an organization have by not having that conversation? Because the auditors work for the 7 of us, and we haven't had that conversation. What risks do we have?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, the auditor did offer to come today to tell you exactly what I told you in the update, and so we figured it wasn't going to be worth the time, considering that he's not presenting council with anything. In speaking with the auditor and Toulouse, our CFO, both of them did indicate that there is no correlation with the 2022 because we're in a surplus position. They said if we were in a deficit position, that would be a different discussion, because then they would need to validate the starting point of 2023. So they're saying that one does not have anything to do with the other just because it's related to assets and other pieces that are not financial.
So we have or potentially have some form of a surplus.
Correct.
So that would be the starting point of this budget that we're going to approve.
No, so it would have been the starting point of the 2023 budget. which is already
Right,
approved.
sorry.
So it just means that because we have a surplus in 2022, our 2023 starting position is fine based on the fact that there's a surplus in 2022 and not a deficit.
And do we have any indication of 2023 of a surplus as well?
The third quarter audited or third quarter financials were presented in committee of the whole, and Rachel did indicate that we anticipate a small to moderate surplus in 2023.
And in our 2024, are we factoring that in? Because that means when we run a surplus means that we are overtaxed.
It's not
or
in,
over revenue of some form, right?
It's not included because typically the surplus would go into a reserve each year and not form the next part of the next year's budget. And there's been a lot of factors that have tied into surpluses lately, especially with COVID and all of the different things that have happened. When we look at it, we had a lot of vacancies, in the last 3 years, and we believe that that is primarily where a lot of the surplus is coming from. So once we get all of our positions filled, which we're very close to right now, we shouldn't see major surpluses anymore.
And would the auditor then be able to communicate to us exactly where those surpluses would have came from?
I'm not exactly sure if they can tell you exactly where it comes from. They can probably tell you which year it relates to.
We should be able to, based on our internal financial system, determine where the surpluses are. The auditor just does a snapshot and an overview, which and they can dig into what the audit means to them, but as far as exactly where the surpluses come from, we would rely on finance for that.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Chair. Sue, so we know what our tax increase would like to be. Do we know anything about the school board? I know requisitions. Yeah, the requisitions. I know. So do we know roughly what might come from the school board? We know Walla is minimum increase.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, we usually get that notice from the province. Their year end is not until the end of March, and that's typically when we find out about grants and other taxation things like school requisition that needs to be paid.
Thank you.
Councilor Nielsen.
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley. I'm trying to interpret your question that you posed with regard to surpluses. And you made the comment that if we are continually having surpluses, then does that not infer that we are typically overtaxing? Was that your point?
We're bringing in too much revenue. Yes. Now, is it taxation? Could be user fees. Or it could be that we aren't spending the dollars that were allocated, whether it was staffing, right? But either way, if you haven't been spending that money, you've collected more money that you needed to spend, which means, generally speaking, overtaxation.
And so then, from that assumption then, as you said, you were toying with the idea of supporting or not supporting a particular budget. We're anticipating, I think Sue said, a moderate surplus this year. Surplus previous years. I don't know how many years we go back with surpluses. But those monies go into reserves, which for the most part are unrestricted?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I believe all of our reserves are restricted for certain purposes. there we've got the contingency, the stabilization. So the reserve policy says what council should do with all of those. And I mean, other than contingency and stabilization, they do have loose terms around them. So one you can use for unexpected purchases throughout the year, and the other one is to help offset massive tax increases. So there is a purpose written into the policy for every reserve that's in there.
But then those are your reserves that you're building through sustainability are built on the back, in many cases, of taxation. And are we using those reserves to bring down taxes? Generally, when we are talking about building the budget. Like at what point do we, I guess, at what point do we say, holy cow, we've got to bring down the tax rate? Only at budget time. Is that correct?
Council has another opportunity before you set the tax rate each year. So a budget is approved at X percent. And then before we send out the requisitions, we get our, end of February, we get our assessor sends us the assessed value of the properties. And then we're able to set, at that point, council could say assessment is higher. Let's just pretend that it is. And we're going to collect extra money. If we keep it at 5.3, we don't want to do that. What's the minimum we need? And there's a potential to drop the tax rate at that point before we send the tax bills out.
And I know it was reported earlier, but could I ask what the current sustainability reserve is?
Just to confirm, when you say sustainability, you mean stabilization, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now it's sitting at 1,377,000, but of that amount, 912 have been committed to other projects already. So the amount that's uncommitted to anything is equal to 466,000.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you. So we had a surplus. You say 900,000 is already allocated. Is that in this budget or is that approved by council?
Stabilization reserve, not surplus.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, all spending and reserves has to be approved by council.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Billingsley.
Thank you. I just want to follow up with Councillor Nielsen's comments about when we take a look at spending, or it seems to be, it comes up at budget. And some of the conversation that we've had throughout the year, I guess, was that we're not very competitive, especially in the non-residential. Residents will say that they pay too much in taxes, and I won't disagree with them. But having said that, we've heard from our economic development team that we're not very competitive at all in the non-residential. We haven't even addressed that. That's not something that's wasn't even discussed. And yet we have surpluses along the way, which who's funding that? They are. We are. The community is. So these are the reasons why I'm struggling to approve this budget.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Just further to Councillor Billingsley, though, if we didn't know what the surplus was in 2022, how can we deal with it? So we have to wait till we find out what it was and then find out what happens in 2023 before we can really deal with it in 2024, because they're both unknown commodities at this point in time.
But we based our 2024 budget on previous years' dollar amounts, right?
Yes, we did.
So
But those dollar amounts
we're taxed too high.
have yet to be.
But we've determined that there was surpluses in those 2 years.
But was it $5 or was it $5 million? We don't know that.
We have a pretty good indication of what it was in 21, and we were given that report today of 2022. So we have an idea.
Yes,
It isn't $5.
but it's not confirmed is my point.
And that goes back to the reason why.
I think we're both on
And
the
I'm
same.
not saying that
We're
I'm
agreeing
looking
with
for a
each
good-
other.
Yeah, and I guess I'm looking for a good argument why we should pass this, I guess.
Councillor Nielsen.
I guess my difficulty in the conversation is not dissimilar to yours, but it strikes me that part of the problem is us, in the context that if we are taking surpluses and putting it into a sustainability reserve, and then we arbitrarily, as a function of doing budget, start pulling all this money out for projects, then we're not building a reserve at all. We're building a piggy bank to draw on to pay bills. And that's a gross misrepresentation in terms of my terminology there. But and so even if we wanted to address sustainability or decreasing a tax level, there aren't really significant dollars in carried forward surpluses because we continue to spend it. And so the balance here is setting your budget and in doing so saying to administration, we're not touching these contingencies. That is, emergencies come up. We've got to live within the budget we've got, as opposed to simply dipping in to that sustainability reserve or the contingency. So a budget really isn't a budget unless you add all the reserves into it and say, this is part of our operating expenditures. So, and so I'm not trying to direct attention to administration so much as to our role here in the direction we give to administration as well. If there's a problem in the process, we're part of that problem as well in terms of how we're authorizing expenditures. And I'll step down from my soapbox.
Council is the only one that directs the funding and the spending,
Yeah.
not part of the process. It is the process.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Sue, her administration. In the event that this wasn't approved, then the course is to revert to the previous year's operating budget. Is that not the practice until such time as this budget gets approved?
Correct. In the alternative options, we did note that you could amend either capital or operating, and or you could pass an interim budget.
I'm sorry, last one?
You could pass an interim budget, which is typically the first quarter of 2023 that we would run on.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to anybody that can answer. If we do not pass a budget today or pass this that's going through today, am I correct in that we are waiting for the audited financials of 2022 to be signed off on, and we understand that there's going to be a qualification? Or are we looking to perhaps not pass the budget because we want to re-go through our numbers that we just went to? And again, are we waiting for the qualification from the auditors to go through our numbers? Because, and the reason I'm asking is if it is something that we're going to come back to in January, what are we coming back to in January? If we're not passing this budget or we're passing an interim budget, what are we looking for to change our minds on what we debated in October and November?
Go ahead.
I'll tackle that from my perspective. My intention isn't to come back and tackle the numbers we've tackled. I guess for me, my frustration is I've been on council a large number of years, and as administration has said, there's been some historical data or lack of data that has put us into having to delay audits on an ongoing basis. And we all have 2 years left in our term, and I would like to think that after the number of years I've been on council, that by the time my term ends here, that our finances and our timelines for meeting audits and all the rest of it are caught up. And we're all above board. And I also believe that's the intention of our administrative team, absolutely. I would like to know our starting point, not just the 2024 budget. I would like the information from the 2022 audit as part of my information package going forward to make decisions about what I can and can't support in future budgetary decisions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And I appreciate the discussion and agree with you. I would love to come and see, for lack of a better word, the numbers working out. And finance is able to answer these questions that we have. If they are tangible capital assets, and if that is the belief of the auditor that has come forward to us and explaining to me how that would impact that we don't know where we're starting this year. Because the way I understand it is we are starting afresh. I get it, we've overtaxed and over revenued, and there could be a million reasons why that is, whether it's COVID and people weren't working and people quitting and wages aren't what they are, etc. But if we start the tax year at zero, because they're not saying financially we're starting at a deficit, we're just not sure what our tangible capital assets are. How does that impact the 2024 budget vote today? Operating budget. I don't know, I'm asking because, and if I am incorrect in my understanding that we are not starting at a zero mark for this year while we're trying to approve an audit from 2 years ago. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I see us as starting at zero with the exception of our tangible capital assets, which from 2022, we can't even talk about those from 2023 until we know what happened in 2022 and exactly how that is impacting an operating budget for going forward based on a small surplus, we think, here at the end of Q3. So if my decision to not pass a budget is because I'm still not happy with the reports we're getting back from finance, that's still not the numbers I looked at 2 months ago. And the numbers we debated and we looked at and we understood 2 years ago, I am so sorry, 2 months ago are still good for those numbers because we're not seeing us at this point in this quarter being far out or far within. We think we're on course for what we budgeted last year. There is an increase. Everybody is increasing because of inflations. We saw what that was and it's 3 or whatever %. And then we debated back and forth to add up to the other 5.5. So I don't know why my vote would change. Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. And I guess through the chair to administration, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm making some assumptions that are incorrect. When I asked for the current state of our sustainability reserve, you gave me a number. But that does not include, I shouldn't say, does that include anticipated revenue from 2022?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, it doesn't. When the 2022 audited financial is done, whatever surplus they've identified, there will be a recommendation from administration on where council should place that money. So it does not include that.
I didn't think so. And so for me, when we talk about whatever the number was, minus $900,000 committed, we've got a couple $100,000 left over. Well, do we have a couple $100,000 left over? In actual fact, depending on what we just do with reserves that come forward to us in January audit, that $400,000 could be $1 million. I don't know. And when you add in 2023's possible surplus, it could go to 1.5 million. I'm pulling numbers out of the air, but those numbers have significant impact on how we're going to support and how we're going to utilize the sustainability reserve to address taxation to residential, non-residential taxpayers is how I'm reading you. And to me, that's the starting point. I'm 2 years, I think it's really normal to be behind a year in understanding where your audited financial statements sit and what impact it has on your reserves. I think it changes the complexity of the budgeting process when we're 2 years behind knowing what our reserve status is. And it may not change mine.
No, it's me trying to understand.
Yeah.
Councillor Blatz.
I too am trying to understand. So because I completely agree, I understand the frustration with everything, and I definitely appreciate the comments that have been made so far. I just wanted, because we keep bringing up the stabilization reserve, and I was curious if the rabbit hole you're going down is that the stabilization reserve may, like our policy surrounding it, may need to change because of the fact that our surpluses keep going into reserve.
To be honest, I don't know if I'm going down the rabbit hole or not, and that might be. All I'm saying is that the information I'm getting in relation to tax and taxation, on some level, I believe should be partially cognizant of what we have in the reserve to offset perceived exorbitant tax rates. And I'm not saying that we're there or we're not there. I'm just saying if I wanted to make a motion to drive the tax rates down based on billions of dollars in the sustainability reserve, I couldn't make that motion in any way, shape, or form because I don't know what's in there.
You know that there's 466,000 in it.
And it's 2 years out of date.
Yeah.
Yeah. 466,000 by a few thousand from 2022 that could be added to any of our reserves once we get those audited financials from 2022 back in 6 months. And because we're more or less on par for 2023 is the reporting we're getting. And I get it's the reporting. But if we're looking to 2 years ago and the surplus that was in 2022, we're not being, oh my gosh, we're not being approved in the audit. The qualification of that is not based on those, that's the surplus of that year financial. It's based on the inability to understand the amount of our tangible TCAs. So that's where I'm not seeing it's related. If we were still seeing this year that we were going to be thousands of dollars over in our projection for Q3, it might have caught that this is a trend. I see that money in 22 catching that it was something that happened in 2022. We're coming out of the pandemic, and I don't want to blame everything on the pandemic. We're coming out of changes in administration. We're coming out of all of these different things happening. And right now, to me, as I see it, it's a blip of that year. It isn't something that continued this year. And I get it if the auditors were saying, we have no idea why these thousands of dollars and you're not being qualified for that for 2022 is also an issue, I would have no problems saying, we don't know what's going on here. But because they are saying this is a clean audit with an exception most likely of just your TCAs, and there was a blip of, and I'm not saying that these thousands of dollars are a bad thing, I'm just saying it was that year. We decide as a group which of the reserves it goes into, and we're looking to make sure it does not continue because we're privy to that information now, but it is not looking to us currently that is happening in 2023. So I don't see a trend. I see something has happened in a year.
Councillor Elliott.
A question through to administration, through the chair. Sue, will we have the audit before we make the final determination on what the tax rate is?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, yes. The auditor plans to be here in January.
So then we would know that before we pass the final budget, before the final tax rate.
Correct.
Thank you. I'd like to call question, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Before you do, I'd like one thing to say. Recognizing that I did miss the third day of budget deliberations, I won't be supporting the operating budget, not based on any of this conversation, just something that was included in the budget. Ready for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Defeated.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
We need to pass a budget today, so could we look at first quarter 2023 as the approval for 2024?
Yep. Looking for a motion to pass an interim budget for 2024 using Q1 of 2023.
So
Councillor Nielsen. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
I move that City Council approves the 2024 capital budget in the amount of $6,091,230 to be funded from sources noted in the 5-year capital plan.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
How will that change since we did not approve the operating budget? Are we wise to pass this or to defeat this as well and do an interim as well on this, or would it matter?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, there is no tax impact on the capital.
Right.
It's all through grants.
So we can separate.
Yes.
Okay.
And to get bids and tendering out, it
Yeah.
would be imperative to. Yep. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 15.5, permission for the mayor's attendance at ICSC 2024 in Whistler.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that City Council approve out-of-province travel, including per diems, travel, and hotel for Mayor Ghanem to attend the 2024 International Council of Shopping Centres Conference in Whistler, BC. And I'd like to speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
In my time as mayor, when I was at Whistler, it was quite impactful that the mayor was in attendance. Many of the developers and those looking to spend dollars in other parts of the country seem to be impressed by not the person, but the position that the mayor was there. So I would support this. Thank you.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed?
Sorry, I was sleeping.
We'll start again. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 15.6, we need to lift a motion from the table, which was from September 25th, 2023. The motion is that City Council approves the recommended amendments to the development permit for Hope Mission. So we need a motion to lift that, please. Councillor Nielsen. Those in favor? Carried. Motion on the floor is that City Council approves the recommended amendments to the development permit for Hope Mission.
May I?
Yep.
Thank you. At the time I asked to have this item tabled, there were some amendments put forward by Hope Mission with regard to height of building and so forth. And at the same time, I understood that the city had some amendments they wished to make in relation to sidewalks and road construction standards. So my first question, I guess, is where are we at with amendments at this point in time? So through the chair to administration, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I now see where that sidewalk comment came from, that it should be Hope Mission that's paying for the sidewalk, not the city. And the city has reviewed the drawings, or our safety codes group has reviewed the drawings, and they put them on hold at the city's request just until council had a chance to discuss this.
So there's no need at this time, Sue, then for the city to add any further amendments to the development permit or the building permit with regard to sidewalks and or road construction standards?
Yeah, that's correct. Hope Mission is responsible for all of that, and the only other amendment would have been on the drawings for the height, but Hope Mission removed that.
Okay, I'm fine with that one.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that would be a motion that we can now vote on?
So it's that we approve the recommended amendments. That would just be the changes to the sidewalk and who's responsible for that cost?
No, they're, well, I don't know, Emily might have a different, we might need to make that amendment just because it might not have been fully communicated on the development permit, but the whole discussion up and to the point that council approved it was based on the fact that Hope Mission was going to be responsible for all the service connections, sidewalks, road improvements, everything to accommodate the site development.
Just to clarify through the chair, through to Councillor Nielsen, those two conditions included in the previous report by administration are actually conditions that were approved as part of the subdivision of the parcel. And so the reason that they administration recommended carrying them forward to the development permit is just to ensure that they were not lost, to ensure that they were followed through on. If they are not approved as part of the current motion, administration is able to track them in other ways as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we clear on what the motion is?
I'm sorry?
Are we clear on what the motion is?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll wait until everybody stops looking like they're thinking. Ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried.
The second motion was in relation to the fact that we are being asked as a council to approve what was called the drawings on the September 25th meeting as were supposed to be attached, and there was no attachment for the drawings. We now have the drawings before us. And so I'm going to move acceptance of the drawings as we now see them today. And I'd like to speak to that.
Okay, just make sure that we have it captured. Good.
And the reason I put the motion on the floor is the motion on the floor has to be an affirmative motion. It can't be a negative motion. I will be speaking against my motion in that I do not plan on approving the building plans as submitted today.
Any further? Sue, go ahead.
Sorry, just for clarification, through the chair to council, the wording in here probably could have been a little bit better because council doesn't approve drawings per se. That's the safety codes officer. But the intent was that council can look at the drawings and say, yes, this matches what I was told originally or what I understood when I passed the approval back then. But if you change it to accept as just to accept the drawings as submitted, then that's different than what was originally intended. But it's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure that council knew safety codes officers pass the building permits or the building plans.
Then I would withdraw that motion and I would put forward a notice of motion for next council meeting. So my notice of motion for next council meeting would be that I move that the motion to approve the development permit for Hope Mission be rescinded. Do we speak to that, or is that just a notice at this point, Mr. Mayor?
Just a notice of motion. Sorry, and just make sure that Lisa has caught that. Notice of motion is to move that council
rescind the development permit for Hope Mission. So are we okay with that one?
Yeah, go ahead, speak to it.
May I make a second notice of motion? Because we don't vote on it, right? It's
Right,
just,
yep.
I'd like to also make a second notice of motion. I move that I need to back up. Rescinds. Okay. My second notice of motion would be that the development permit for Hope Mission be reconsidered. That should have been the first motion. I'm sorry, Your Worship, but they can come together at next council meeting. And now I would like to speak to it when it's caught up. So, and I apologize, the first motion was to be reconsidered and the second motion was to be rescinded. However, and forgive me, I'm not a legislature guru here. My understanding is that the reason I have both of those notices on board is that the fact that there's a notice of motion for that motion to be reconsidered. My understanding is that there can be no further action taken on moving forward until that motion is actually reconsidered. The second motion is in relation to rescinding the motion. Had I simply put forward the motion at being rescinded, and it comes up in a month's time, a rescinding motion means that unless something has already happened that cannot be undone. And so the first motion for reconsidering is make sure that nothing gets started, because that would make the rescinding motion null and void. And that's why there's two motions before it. And the third reason is I think council has more information to consider moving forward. And I think that's information that Councillor Billingsley will present later on in the meeting. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. (15.7) Hope Mission Project. Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Over the last few days, myself and Councillor Nielsen have been in discussions with Minister Wilson's office in regards to the potential of a different solution to the shelter / recovery / whatever Hope Mission is providing. We were provided yesterday, well, we were provided a couple weeks ago confidential information. Last night, I was informed that now this can be made public, and I think that that's important. And it's a memorandum of understanding with Maskwacis Recovery Community Initiative that has indeed been signed off by the 4 chiefs. So I think it's very important because we identified, at least I identified earlier, that this seems to be a regional issue as opposed to just a Wetaskiwin issue, that I think we'd be doing our due diligence to look at other potential options. I'm not saying that this is the option, but potential options. So with that, I will make a motion that I move that council directs administration to investigate options to pause the building permit for Hope Mission for a period of 120 days.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Is there a reason that we haven't had a meeting with the 4 chiefs or with Minister Wilson or being presented with this information from the province when it's the province that's funding the project right now?
The intent was to actually get together earlier in the week, but unfortunately, one of the ministers who was planning on coming down had a family tragedy, I guess, and unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen. As I said, I don't know for sure that this is going to hold, or this is in the best interest of the community, but it has potential if so. So as I said, I do believe that doing due diligence, Hope Mission has not started construction, hasn't dug a hole, hasn't done any of those type of things. We heard loud and clear this morning by the people that came this morning, I'm not saying that's everybody in the community, to take a look. Here we're going to take a look. Now, it doesn't say that this is better than what Hope Mission is proposing. It's just something different, and I think it's really important that we do our due diligence and look at all the options. I know they're late to the table, but they're here.
But it's funding coming from the same
Yes.
order of government.
Correct.
So why is, I'm just not understanding why this is becoming a municipal issue when the province is the one funding the project.
Because we're the ones who control whether or not Hope Mission begins construction on the project.
Okay. Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, why 120 days?
180 days?
Oh, I wrote it down wrong.
No,
I don't even know where I
kidding.
am.
No, he's asking. for
Oh, I
different-
understand.
Why? I don't believe that that this will happen overnight. Whether or not putting this all together and having a solid plan will happen in a matter of 30 days.
And I think,
And it's not, and I also believe that because of winter's coming, that Home Mission will not be in a panic. They won't be starting construction, at least, I would think, till April, May. Anyway.
Similar to that not happening overnight, contrary to popular belief, neither has the plans for the shelter that's being presented now. We've been working on it for well over a year. So
Right.
again, my frustration with the province coming to and getting into an agreement with an organization to fund a project is now coming back to propose another project. And again, I don't know why the city is doing the province's dirty work. So I won't support that motion. I think we've been in conversations with both the province. I've made many attempts with Musqueam and the Four Nations to have a partnership, and for the province to come back at the 11th hour saying, yeah, but we might be able to do this. I'm not supporting that.
Mr. Mayor, we've had this proposal from the minister for about a month now, and it was trying to get everybody together to discuss it. I would also like to follow up on Councillor Billingsley about due diligence. If Louise Nadeau is correct in her statement this morning that she got from Kelly Rowe said to her, we did not do our due diligence, which I felt was a slap in the face. But anyway, if he feels we haven't, this gives us the opportunity to do that now.
Anything further? Councillor Aberley.
thank you, Mayor Gandam. So I am not, through the chair to council and the community in general, I am not ignorant to the fact that many people in this community think that my mind is already made up. And it was not, and it continues to not be fully made up. I have been told to take the emotion out of my decisions as we go forward. Councillor Bronco and I had a good discussion a couple weeks ago, and he told me to vote with my heart. We have been here for the past 2 years, and I've made very hard decisions, and my colleagues, all of you who I respect, have told me to stop voting with my heart. And I appreciate all of this advice, and the one thing I will always say about me is I can come across as emotional. I will always share my heart with you, tell you how I feel, but when it comes down to making decisions, I'm very analytical. I am very decided on what these are going to be, and what I have not seen from anybody is proof, one way or another, that this shelter is the cause, not the correlation, but the cause of the issues that are in our community. I have seen from multiple levels of AHS, the RCMP, mental health services talking about how an emergency shelter, I'm not convinced on phase 2, how an emergency shelter has helped and can help our community. Is it growing out of scale? Perhaps. Not the numbers that are being presented to me as fact, not people's thoughts. If I was voting with my heart, I would say no to Hope Mission. I'm not voting with my heart. I'm voting for what I have believed since I've moved to this community. All the work that most of you have done is that something inside our community is needed. I hope that what is being proposed for us as greater establishments to make it a regional system in central Alberta, I hope that all of these things come true and that we can have multiple areas working to help the people that are struggling, whether they've been struggling for generations or finding them newly struggling now. I hope we continue to support these things. Our job is to continue to look after the businesses, is to continue to look after our citizens, is to continue pushing our RCMP and K Division and our ministers of many in this province to continue to look at the issues that Wetaskiwin has. And now, and has always had. That is our job. I am voting against this delay, not because of my heart, but because I believe that something in this community is needed. And maybe it will be small, and maybe everything around us will grow to take that away from us, and I hope I'm wrong. Thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, I have 2 points. The first one is, are we able to do that? Like stop building permits because have they not been approved already, or what's going on?
Through the chair, through to Councillor Blatz. The text of the motion, I believe, was to investigate options, and indeed that's what we would need to do. My understanding is, given the ownership status of the parcel at this point, that the city's power may be less. The city may have more limited power to withhold building permits. However, we will look into what the options are.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious about that because I wasn't sure if we're able to tell somebody to stop for 120 days or if it's us actually having the power to do that. So yeah, that's why I wanted to confirm first. Yeah, so second part of my thing. So it was funny because Councillor Aberly talked about how we've been talking about this for the 2 years she's been on council, but it's been 5 for me, where we have open and closed shelters nonstop for every year that I've been on council. And we were told time and time again that the city needs to get out of the business of running a shelter. And so we did, and we contracted someone to do it for us. And now we're being told that we should still have an in with running shelters. And this has been incredibly difficult. I'm someone that has worked in healthcare for 10 years, and I have seen how bad it gets when we don't have a shelter. I have seen people freeze to death. I have seen people using the hospital as a shelter because we don't have anywhere else to put them. We can't release people from the hospital unless they have a place to go. And so that makes it incredibly difficult when it's minus 40 and there's nowhere for these people to go. In regards to everything that we were talking about with another facility, that would be great if that's something that can be done, but I don't think that negates what we need in our community specifically as well, because I do get concerned that if we have something outside of our city, that it won't get utilized and we'll still be in the same position as we are with having encampments set up, and then we're back in the same position again of talking about an emergency shelter. And so I don't think that 2 projects need to be separate. I think that they can work and operate together. How that looks, I don't know, because the province is the one that is funding this. And if they feel strongly that this second option is the option that we should be deciding on or be a part of, then I feel like that needs to be communicated to us and bring us to the table rather than just being mentioned in it, especially when they're the project funders for both projects. And so for me, I don't agree with having a hold put on for what Hope Mission has been approved to do. The reason why is because I talked to Salvation Army when we were at the holiday train. They mentioned to me that they had over 200 applications for Christmas dinner this year, which means that there's 200 families that are living below the poverty line within Wetaskiwin that aren't homeless yet. Those are 200 families that could end up homeless in the next year. And so for me, this is an ongoing issue, and we're only going to see the unhoused community get bigger, and we're seeing it everywhere. Camrose having 80 homeless people for the first time ever. The problem is only expanding from here. Do I agree with us being the central Alberta hub for this? Absolutely not. I want to help our people, and I want to help our community, and our community has a large unhoused population that I know from 5 years of getting so much feedback from different subject matter experts that this is something that we need. And if there's another project that goes in accordance with this, I'm okay with that too, but I don't think that we need to put projects on hold to see what something could be. Because I don't even think that should be our call. I think that should be the province's call. Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to administration, we have an agreement with Hope Mission until next March, or is it November?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I believe it's the end of 2024, the fall.
Okay. So that happens regardless of what decision is made by council.
It says at a minimum until the fall of next year. So if it went longer, it wouldn't require an extra motion.
Thank you.
And that was with the province, wasn't it? Not directly with Hope Mission?
Through the mayor, to the mayor, the agreement is not with the city of Wetaskiwin and the Hope Mission. What council approved last year was the use of that road and the use of that right of way. And so the agreement for the Hope Mission, between the Hope Mission and the province, is with the province.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anything further?
Yes. Through the chair to administration, do we need to have this reported back to us, because this is just investigating options? Should something be brought back to us for the next council meeting? Is that enough time?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, if we could do the last January meeting, that will give us enough time with holidays and stuff.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Billingsley, just adding to your motion then a report back for the January 22nd meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a question to that. Would you want, I'm concerned about Councillor Nielsen's notices of motions and how they go in accordance with that, because I feel like if we were going to vote on options, then that would be affected by.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But nothing would preclude my motions for reconsidering or rescinding being tabled to the next meeting to align with the information you get back from administration. I'm simply bound through my motions to have it come to the next meeting. And then what this council does with my motions is in council's hands.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that everything lines up properly.
Okay. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor?
Hold it. What are we voting on?
It's on your screen.
Oh, Dean, but I thought that he was talking to his motion.
No.
We've already voted on.
Okay. Do it again.
We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 15.8, derelict properties. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. Yeah, with the information that we got in committee of the whole, I just wanted to say that it's really important to have this sooner than a year or 2 years. And so I think that us looking into derelict properties using the city of Edmonton, to me, it's that would just take too much time. And we have other municipalities that we're able to look at as examples. And so I would move that City Council directs administration to prepare a draft residential assessment subclass bylaw to bring back for approval by Q3 2024.
Any discussion? Councillor Billingsley.
I know that we had a brief discussion this morning about following Edmonton, and theirs was only residential. Would you be open to the idea of commercial as well?
Absolutely. Yep.
So
You can make an amendment.
Yeah, you can make an amendment if you like.
Okay, then I would like to make an amendment.
A draft of residential and commercial assessment subclass bylaw.
Yes.
Okay.
I like that. Thank you. I didn't catch that.
Amended by Councillor Billingsley to the amendment. Councillor Bronco.
Could we add to the amendment, if I can or not?
No, speak to the amendment. If you'd like to make an amendment, you can do that after we vote on this one.
No, I guess my question, that's the rule. Okay, no, my question would be different, but, okay.
Anything further to the amendment? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Consider it amended. Councillor Bronco.
Look, we're going to their elected properties. What about the city's properties that don't get grass cut or anything like that? What happens to that?
That's not under our definition.
Well, if the weeds are 6 feet tall or garbage all over the place, is that not part of commercial, or just just go after the tax?
It's different, and then you can submit a, what is it called?
Service tracker.
Service tracker, thank you. So the city has an online service tracker, and then you can make that complaint, and then it gets addressed. Councillor Billingsley.
I was just going to say, we could charge 5 times our taxes that we pay for our municipal buildings, and it wouldn't matter. It's a level of service, what he's speaking of, not taxation.
Ish. Because it's not meeting the level of service that council
Correct.
is. Yeah. Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Anything else from administration? Nope.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would like a point of privilege to read a letter that I wrote.
Sure.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I stewed over it and everything else, but I just, to Mayor and Council and to the citizens of Wetaskiwin, first of all, I'd like to thank the people who shared their views today, but I feel that I need to reply to those who feel Council is not listening. This is my point of view, not that of Council. There has always been a concern for the unhoused in our city, and various solutions were tried unsuccessfully. In February 29, and let me emphasize, almost 4 years ago, Council directed administration to investigate options for a permanent solution to this challenge. June 2019, Hope Mission presented to Council in a public Council meeting how they might be able to develop a homeless shelter. And I'm talking about that time period now. During that time period, Council received many favorable, positive, and supportive comments, emails, and letters regarding this proposal. In that period of time, I did not receive any negative comments. As time passed, funding to proceed with the shelter came from the provincial government, not the city of Wetaskiwin. All of the decisions made by Council were done in public meetings and in public hearings, regardless of what you were told at different public forums. Where we have live streamed and made our meetings available on YouTube. So we have not been trying to hide things, and nothing was done in secret. Quit it. Decisions made were by a vote of the majority of council, not just the mayor. The mayor can't make decisions without the support of council, and all decisions must be made in a public meeting. The city manager does not make decisions, only council can do that. Threatening, swearing at the mayor, his family, the city manager, and council members has no place in a democratic society. There's one person in council chambers at this moment who called the unhoused people savages. That shows you the mentality of some of the people who are working with a different group in this community. One vocal group suggests that the people in Wetaskiwin don't feel safe. How do you think council feels with the threats and bullying it receives? As well, a number of people who wanted to speak in favor of the shelter at town hall meetings did not do so as they did not feel safe. Council also hears about the lack of businesses and development in our city. And I really want to think about this question. Let me ask you, if you were a family or a business looking to relocate in Wetaskiwin and you read what's on Rant and Rave, would you move here? Maybe you should look at yourselves and not always blame council. Keyboard warriors share rumors and misinformation without checking facts. That is cowardly. Talk to us face to face and get the facts instead of hiding behind your computer or iPhone. Do something positive to make our community better. Volunteer to help with the Salvation Army kettles. Volunteer for a community board or committee. Volunteer at the food bank. Help out at community events. That will make our community better. A quote in last week's Times says it all. We ought to be able to have a conversation about the issues without personal attacks and without having an us against them attitude. That solves nothing and only serves to create chaos and spread misinformation and conspiracies. Thank you for indulging me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Meeting is adjourned at 14:45.